Tata Steel in IJmuiden nu. Ja, dat bedrijf is de laatste tijd natuurlijk veel in het nieuws. En niet op een positieve manier. Mensen die in de buurt van de staalfabriek wonen, die leven gemiddeld 2,5 maand korter. En ze hebben door blootstelling aan fijnstof een hogere kans op longkanker. Dat zijn recente bevindingen van het RIVM. En ook neemt Tata in zijn eentje 7% van de CO2-uitstoot in Nederland voor zijn rekening. De hoogste Indiase baas van Tata Steel die heet T.V. Narendran. We hebben hem nog niet eerder op de Nederlandse televisie gezien. Maar hij was deze dagen in IJmuiden. En daar kregen wij eergisteren de gelegenheid om hem te interviewen. Mr. Narendran, thank you for the opportunity to ask you some urgent questions about Tata Steel. If I lived in Wijk aan Zee, I would be worried about my health, my children's health. If you lived in Wijk aan Zee, would you be worried?
Well, from the reports that I hear, yes, we are concerned about what we are hearing. And we are very committed to do whatever is required to address the issue. Yeah. But I think we accept that there are reports which tell us that we need to do more, and we will do more.
Yeah. Would you stay or would you move from Wijk aan Zee if you live there?
In India, most of the time, I also stay close to a steel plant. So from that point of view, yes. Like everyone else, I stay close to a steel plant. But yes, it also means that we have a responsibility to make sure that the people who live around us are comfortable living there.
So you understand the worries of the people living here. Researchers of RIVM have recently concluded that there is a direct link between Tata Steel emissions and the risk of disease for the people living here. Were you shocked by that?
Yeah, I mean, obviously this time the report is a bit more specific. That concerns us. It's not as if we've not been doing anything. I think we've been doing a lot over the years. But obviously what it tells us is we need to do more. Yeah. And we are committed to do that.
But was it a shock to you that there is this direct link between the emissions and the chance of getting lung cancer, for instance?
I think what I heard from the report is that the fine particles lead to an impact on the life expectancy by about 2.5 months, and I think that obviously concerns us.
Yes. Maybe you could have known already, because the news program Eén Vandaag found out that already in 1975, when this was called hoogovens, it was established by scientific research that Tata emissions hoogovens then caused lung cancer 50 years ago.
So I heard about that, but again, I think the way we look at it, it's over the years, the company is continuously invested in improving the emissions that come out of it. I don't have the data for 1975, what we were emitting in 1975, but I know that even in the last 10, 15, 20 years, there's been a lot of reduction in our emissions. But we are a steel plant, so obviously there is a challenge that we deal with because of the industry that we are in.
Yes.
But we need to make sure we are the cleanest and the best steel plant in the world.
Yes, and obviously what has been done in the past 50 years has not been enough. Let's zoom into these RIVM findings. They conclude that people living here, as you said, have a 2.5 months shorter life expectancy. And there's a higher risk of developing lung cancer due to exposure to fine particles. That's important to know, I think. Do you acknowledge those findings?
We've read that, and I have personally not read it because I've heard it from my colleagues.
Yes.
We want to understand it deeper, and then...
But you do not challenge it?
Well, I would assume that RIVM has looked at it and studied with all the data that they have and come to their conclusion. So we respect their point of view.
Yeah, you have no reason to disbelieve them.
It's a government-appointed agency, so we go by what they say.
Okay.
But we will look at it based on our own numbers and our own way of measuring some of these things. But I think the fundamental point is for us to acknowledge that there is a report which says this, and rather than nitpick on whether we are right or they are right, I think we commit that yes, there needs to be improvement continuously.
So you acknowledge, and the next question then is, do you feel responsible?
We are a steel plant. A steel plant emits something or the other. We need to make sure we are the best steel plant that there is. Just like the car emits something out of the tailpipe.
Yes.
A car is a car.
But that's the future. You have the challenge to improve, that's what you say. But
no, I think we've continuously improved over the years. Maybe it's not enough, but it's not that the emissions today are the same as the emissions in 1975.
No.
I'm sure the data will tell us that it's very, very different, because I've seen the data in the last 10 years. And it's much, much better than it was even 10 years back.
Yeah, but still.
But may not be enough. I'm not saying that that's the end of the road, but I think we have always said that there's something that we need to continue to do.
Yeah. People living near Tata here have a higher risk of getting sick. Is it, I wonder, is that a burden on you personally?
Absolutely. Because I don't know how well you know the Tata Group. The Tata Group has built its reputation over 100 years by being a very responsible corporate citizen, which works with the community to address issues which the community may have. And that's a reputation we have built in India over 100 years. We are relatively newer in Netherlands. We are only 15 years old in Netherlands. It's obvious that we need to do more work to convince the people that we are as committed as we are anywhere in the world to work with the communities and find solutions, because we pride on globally on being a responsible corporate citizens. I don't say we are perfect, but yes, we are always committed.
But let's have a look at the present time and the facts we have now. There is a well-known lawyer here in the Netherlands, Mrs. Benedict Fiek. Have you heard of her?
Yes.
Yes. She's pressing criminal charges against Tata on behalf of 1,100 people who live here. Does this worry you at all?
Yeah, it worries me, because also I think there's been a lot said about my colleagues here. But I think we should respect the fact that all my colleagues here are also doing the best that they can. They are committed people who've been professionals working in the company, in the industry for a long time. And I think nobody comes to work saying that they should do a bad job. I think they've all come here to say that we should do something.
Still, Mrs. Fiek says the CEO here of Tata Steel IJmuiden should be jailed.
I think that's very unfair.
Why?
Because Hans van den Berg, who's the CEO, has been here and part of this journey, who's continuously led from the front, made a lot of improvements over the years. And I think we may feel that he's not done enough. But I think we should also respect the fact that there's a lot that has been done.
Yes, but her case is, she says that the people in charge in Tata IJmuiden should be personally prosecuted for one very special item, and that is endangering public health.
If you are working in a steel company, you could argue that you're always endangering public health because there's some emission or the other. But we are going by the regulations. There are regulations which police what we are supposed to emit. We've been within that. Now you may say the regulations need to be tighter, but it's not that we've been exceeding regulations or we've not been playing as per the law. So it's like, do you penalize somebody because he's driving a car and there's tailpipe emission which is harmful to the public?
Well, there has been an interesting case, and that's the Gemoers case in Dordrecht here in the Netherlands. Obviously you know about this. There's a polluting company cannot just rely on the permit. That's what the court said in this case. Complying with your permit is not enough. If you know that your emissions are carcinogenic, you have to report that to the authorities.
Yeah, but I would assume the authorities have also drawn up regulation based on their studies of what is harmful and not harmful. And obviously any regulation gets tighter over time as there's more understanding about the impacts of various emissions. So,
but the court says if you know more than the authorities, you have to cooperate and you have to report that. If you don't do that, then you're in trouble.
Okay, so I hear you. But I can't comment on that because are you suggesting that we knew more and didn't report? How do you say that?
I don't know. I'm asking.
Even I don't know.
Okay.
Because if we say in 1975 we knew, did we know more than what the regulators did? Did the regulators draw up regulation based on that information? We followed the regulation. But if somebody says that we knew more than what the regulators did and didn't tell them, that's a different point of view. But I don't think we have anything to tell us that that's what happened.
Let's look at Mr. Narendran, if I may, at Dutch politics.
Yeah.
This conversation obviously is about health issues and also climate issues connected to Tata Steel. In Dutch politics, there's growing concern about Tata Steel. Rob Jetten, now a Minister of Climate, you know him?
Yeah.
He says we should close down Tata in 2030 if they still use coal for producing steel. Well, that sounds like a clear warning.
Okay.
What's your comment on it?
Well, there is a transition plan, but we must keep in mind that switching from one energy source to another is a journey. It involves a lot of investments.
So 2030 is not...
We are significantly...
realistic?
I don't know if you can say you can't use any coal at all. Because even if we start today, can we close everything? Of course you can close everything. But can you switch to an alternate energy source in such a short period of time? We've seen what happened in the gas markets in the last 1 year. So if we were switching from coal to gas or hydrogen, is there a guarantee that hydrogen is available? We need more than 300,000 tons of hydrogen. At what price? Because we have to compete. It's a globally competitive industry. We have to compete with our peers in Germany, in Spain, and Belgium.
Yeah.
So there are a lot of issues. So the question is, theoretically, yes, it's possible. But is that practical? Is that something which,
Too many question marks, you say.
Absolutely. I think there are a lot of issues which need to get addressed before we can say yes. By then, we will stop using coal. We will certainly use much less coal than we do today. But I think that's a conversation we are having with the government.
Okay, but politicians like Mr. Yetin and also people in the government say, well, extra pressure is needed on Tata because they're too slow. Other companies, your competitors, ThyssenKrupp, ArcelorMittal in other countries, they already have mega deals with their governments who pay money for this transition to the companies. Are you too slow?
I think it's a conversation between the government and us.
Or is the government too slow?
I don't want to comment on that. I think both of us have questions of each other, right? I think that's the conversation. But the government obviously has to be careful where it puts the money and how it spends the money. We obviously need the comfort from the government because it's a multi-billion-dollar journey.
What do you expect from the Dutch government?
I think we want to move very quickly, come to an understanding on what the expectations are of each other, what is the support we can give each other, and move ahead like our peers have in other countries.
How much do you need from Dutch government?
I don't think I can give you a specific number, but it's unfair for me to do that because it's a private conversation with the government.
Yeah.
So I should respect their point of view as well.
Yes, your CEO, Mr. Van den Berg, mentioned earlier in this conversation, he once stated in a debate in the Bali in Amsterdam that 1 billion euros will be needed from the Dutch government. Is that a realistic figure?
I don't want to comment on specific numbers, but I can give you a few principles if you look at the agreements between steel companies and other governments in Europe. If you look at Germany, if you look at Spain, even if you look at UK, I mean, Tata Steel has recently signed, not signed, it's basically come to an understanding with the government. I think the broad principles of the ask of most steel companies, of governments, is about 40 to 50% of the capex that is required for the transition. And depending on the local issues, some support on if it is energy costs are high, how can we support on that? If hydrogen is available, what is the price at which it is available? There's a bit of capex support and a bit of OPEX support. That's the principle because ultimately you want a level playing field. Because if you're going to spend government money and Tata Steel money on building a steel plant which is very different from what it is today, Tata Steel in Netherlands is one of the most competitive steel plants in Europe.
Yeah.
So at the end of this journey, are you building a sustainable business? Because the last thing you want is for the government to spend money and have a business which cannot survive.
Still, many people may think, why should the taxpayer have to pay for cleaning up the mess that Tata Steel made?
It's not about Tata Steel, it's about the steel industry. I think nowhere in the world is a steel industry transitioning without some support from the government. And that is true of the solar industry, that's true of the wind industry.
Yeah.
When you're transitioning from a certain process route to another process route, there will be a cost.
But what the Dutch government also would like to know is how much is Tata itself going to invest in this?
Absolutely.
And is Tata in India going to invest money in Tata IJmuiden?
Absolutely, if required, yes. I don't think that's
But so you say yes, but you can't put a number to it, or can you?
Because that depends on the conclusion of the discussion with the government.
Yeah.
Because there are a number of items which need to get discussed.
Okay, I'm a bit surprised because in your annual report it says that there will be no money flowing from India to Tata Steel Europe for potential carbon-related costs.
No.
It says literally these costs would be borne by the society either through higher steel prices or through public spending / subsidies. So this sounds like no money from India to IJmuiden.
I'm not sure from where in the annual report that sentence was picked up. Maybe there's a paragraph to it, maybe there's more to it. Let me put it this way. We've always said there are 3 stakeholders involved in this. One is the countries and the governments concerned, right? How can the countries or the government support through either capex support, opex support, or policy support? Secondly, the company itself has to put in money, right? We see Tata Steel as one company with multiple sites, okay? It's one balance sheet. It's not that you have a separate balance sheet for Netherlands, separate balance sheet. The annual report you're talking about is a consolidated balance sheet. So if we borrow money in Netherlands, that reflects on our balance sheet as Tata Steel Group. It's not a separate entity, right? So if we borrow €1 billion to invest in this, that reflects on our overall balance sheet. So it really, we don't draw the distinction. The third point is we are saying that if customers want green steel, they should be willing to pay more. And I think many customers are willing to pay more. Maybe for first 10 years you need to pay more. It's a bit like solar and wind.
Okay.
After that, as you scale up and everyone's making green steel, then that becomes the base on which everybody pays.
When will this plant as a whole be green? When can you say this to the people living here?
So, you know, to be honest, till 3-4 years back, it was all about CO2, right?
Yes.
So the whole plan was how do we reduce the CO2 emission by 5 million tons?
7% of the total Dutch
Absolutely,
emission.
right? Yeah. But today the conversation is beyond CO2. It is also about
health,
yes. Right? So I think there are two dimensions to it which we recognize. Like I said, till 3 years back, the plan was, can we reduce the CO2 by 5 million tons by 2030? Yes, we are on track for that. And then can we convert the rest of the plant also to make it a net zero plant? Yes, we had made that plan by 2035.
Net zero?
Net zero means reduce the CO2. Basically, we would move from coal to gas.
Yes.
And as and when hydrogen is available, we would use hydrogen.
Okay.
That was the plan. And we stand by that plan. But now, because of the health issues and the need for us to move faster, we are discussing with the government to say, what is the best way for us to move faster? Because as we address some of the CO2 issues, we address some of the health-related issues.
The question was really simple. Can you put a year here on the table where you say, okay, then health-wise, climate-wise, Tata Steel IJmuiden will be green, will be fine, will be safe?
So the question is, what do you mean by safe? How do you define safe?
People not getting ill?
Are you saying there will be a zero-emission plant? There will never be a zero-emission steel plant. When you make steel, there will be some emissions, right?
So that's very honest of you.
What we are committed is we will certainly be much better than the regulations. So we leave it to the regulatory authorities to look at what is the right regulation which drives that balance between the need to have an industry and the need to take care of the health of the employees, of the citizens. And we are always committed to be better than that and not be limited by that. But to say that there's a steel plant anywhere in the world which will not emit anything, I don't think that's a practical expectation, because that any industry will emit something, right? You need to make sure that what you emit is as clean and as green as possible, right? And that we are committed to do. So we want to be the benchmark in the steel industry in the world, and we want to demonstrate that in Netherlands.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Good.
Bedankt voor het kijken. En vond je dit een goed gesprek? Vergeet je dan niet te abonneren. Een like of een comment achterlaten kan natuurlijk ook. Oh ja, had je dit al gehoord?
Jij was toch dat meisje die dat brood met ons deelde. 1 actie, 1 keus, 1 mens, die kan het verschil maken.